Guardians of the Plantation and No Dumbest Bill in America. This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials. And the Millennial joining me today is Ryan Brady. Welcome back, Ryan Brady.
How's it going?
Absolutely great. It's actually, we're recording this podcast in the evening because Ryan has a real job and then he has this job. So he's two jobs, two full-time jobs. So welcome back. And of course, we have Christopher Hopkins, our assistant producer, and Adam Katora, our producer. So yeah, you heard that title right. It's called Guardians of the Plantation. And so why are we calling this podcast Guardians of the Plantation? Well, this week, we got a great example of what happens to you if you are a black Republican and you dare to run for office or you dare to show yourself as someone who thinks differently from everyone else, or someone who just has their own critical thinking skills and their own independent mind. Well, Kim Klacik was on The View. Yeah, that show The View that so many of us don't watch, but quite frankly, they do have a lot of people that watch it, especially women.
The clips on YouTube are entertaining.
They are, they can be. And so Kim Klacik, who's running for Congress in the state of Baltimore, in the state of Maryland, speak Mark, and in the city of Baltimore. Yeah, I know this.
Your state.
It's actually where I live. She's running there, and she's running against the machine, the Democrat machine. And we have a clip of Kim Klacik, actually two clips. It's kind of part one and part two clips. The first one, of course, they're trying to ask her, as you would think, hey, why are you running for Congress? What do you want to do? What are you trying to achieve? Oh, no. Instead, they're putting her in the hot seat of, how can you be black and be running as a Republican in the same party as Donald Trump? It's just disgusting. Mm-hmm. And you can see why so many people of color don't want to run for office the way they really live their lives.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
No, you see it, but also it's always what I've seen time and time again. The Democrat Party always takes ethnic groups as one singular monolith and only hit it on certain issues that they think that one monolith will agree with, and they say, oh, we'll vote for you because you're just doing this, when it's actually a lot of people, everyone in those groups are individual people with their own free thoughts and free wills to think what they want to do, and they don't think the same. They're not one big collective. They're human beings. They're individual people.
Exactly. And here's the thing. So, of course, Kim Klacik running in Baltimore, and she lives in the state of Maryland, of course, running in the city against the Democrat machine, which has been in control there for many, many decades. She decides, nonetheless, to go from one media outlet to another and talk about how bad things are in Baltimore, but they don't really want to hear that because that's not the narrative. We have a clip on that, and here it is.
But let me ask you this. During ABC's town hall, Trump said that he hopes there isn't a race problem in the country, but he's repeatedly branded anti-racism protesters in the U.S. as terrorists. Now, while you say that Black lives, and let me also say he's pointedly declined to condemn right-wing violence at those same demonstrations. While you say that Black lives do matter, you are not a supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement, is my understanding. I want to know why not, and I also want to ask you, do you recognize that there is right-wing violence also at these demonstrations?
Yes, I'm going to dial this all the way back. Thank you for all your questions and your stats in the beginning there. I'm running against Kwesi and Fume. Sure. My opponent was there from 1987 to 1996. So all your stats are very accurate. And they are accurate because my opponent and Joe Biden signed over that 1994 crime bill, which led to a lot of those numbers you just laid out. Now, I will say that Black Lives Matter movement started out great. There's a lot of peaceful protesters that are involved in it. But at some point, it was hijacked. Now we have people coming into cities, and these are outsiders. If you look at the arrest records, they're outsiders coming into cities and burning down, looting businesses, and a lot of them minority-owned businesses in the name of, I don't even know what, because I don't even know what their listed demands are. They say they want to defund the police, but at the same time, I mean, you take a look at that, it doesn't make any sense. If you want police to have more training and to be better equipped for their job, you would add funding.
Yeah, you'd add funding. So she has, Kim Klacik, of course, has her own mind. She goes on The View. All she does, she wants to talk about the city of Baltimore and what awful shape it is in. But instead, the interviewers on The View, the panel, they all have an opportunity, a shot at asking questions. And this particular panelist wants to know about Donald Trump and about Kimberly Klacik's support of Donald Trump, rather than talking about the issues that actually people care about in the cities in America.
Instead of that, they're not taught. She doesn't want to know about why Kimberly Klacik is running and what does she bring to fix Baltimore, or her district rather. It's more like I forget the panelist's name on The View, but basically it seems like she wants to figure out what potentially is wrong in Kimberly Klacik's head, which is not wrong. She's a free-thinking person that's running for a vacant seat, and she thinks she can bring a different perspective. And granted, she's running on the Republican Party ticket. She won the primary, and she's going to give a juxtaposition of what she can provide versus what's the same old, but from the Democrats, putting some person's always been in the politics, but will they actually change anything, or they'll just get up in there and get their pension basically and just serve a term and then just retire? It's just crazy.
It is absolutely amazing to me because of the fact that The View only wants to talk about the 4 years that Donald Trump's been in office, and they're trying to make a connection between America's failing cities that have been run exclusively by Democrats and Donald Trump, when it was pre-pandemic a fact that incomes were increasing better than they've ever increased across all races and so forth, which we probably really shouldn't be measuring anyway.
I agree with that.
But nonetheless, this is what matters to the Democrat viewers of The View. So then Kim Klacik on The View gets Joy Behar, because Joy Behar plays, she of course is the last questioner naturally on The View because she's by far the nastiest. And that's the way they started The View. First you get someone who's somewhat friendly, then you get someone who starts challenging you, then you get the nasty, and then you get the really nasty. And of course, Joy Behar comes naturally.
They butter you up before they bake you.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did. Except that I think Kimberly Klacik fully expected this was going to happen. And so she absolutely crushes Joy Behar in this clip. And here it is.
Come on, Kim. Excuse me, I have to say something to you. He told Bob Woodward that it was a very serious issue and it's airborne and that it was terrible. And then he went out and told the American people, don't wear masks, it's all going to go away. You have to put some blame on your president. I'm sorry. You're putting it on something extraneous here. Talk to the point, please.
Is this Joy speaking? The same Joy? The same Joy that paraded around in blackface not too long ago? Come on, Joy. I don't think you should be asking these questions. I am an African American.
Excuse me. The black community had my back. They know that that was not blackface. That was an homage. Oh, please, just answer the question.
The black community has your back? The black community has your back?
They do. Sonny,
the black community did not vote for you.
Well,
the black community did not vote for you. What planet
It was during
are
a
you
special
living
election.
on?
Sonny, can I speak?
What planet are you living on?
It was during a special election while we were still under lockdown and I could not talk to people. Can I speak, or are you just going to scream over me?
This becomes a big... Listen, Kim, good luck to you. Thanks to Kim Klacik.
That was very immature, but thank you for having me.
So that was just Kim Klacik. Crushed that. Great job, Kim Klacik. So proud that we had her on this program many months ago before she became a national figure. So proud. And we're going to have her back, too, by the way.
That'll be great.
But I got to tell you something. Joy Behar says, the black community had my back. It was like, yeah, they had your back the way they had Ralph Northam's back, too, when he did blackface.
The fact she defended it as paying a homage to black people, I'm like, wait, what? So many people have used that excuse of being like eviscerated. So how did you get a pass?
And they get canceled.
Yep.
So how is Joy Behar still on The View? Like, the wokest of the woke women in America. Yes, she's still on there, but she went out in blackface.
I think universally blackface is, obviously you don't do it because it's horrible. But on top of that,
clearly you don't.
And you're making light of black people anyways when you do it. But the fact is, now it seems like, wait, you can pick and choose? Because usually it's like blackface discovered a few decades in the past. It's still not okay, and you're still going to get some heat for it. But it's like what?
So podcast listeners, what information did you get from that interview that The View just had with Kim Klacik? You got no information that would make the city better of Baltimore.
No.
Just no information whatsoever. But yet she went on that program to provide specific information. They weren't interested.
Nope. They just wanted to vilify her and try and ruin her chances.
And why? Because she's black and she's a Republican. Yeah. And that's what makes her, that's the most fascinating thing. The Democrat Party and their useful idiots in the media are not interested in making things better for the black community. And that's why we're calling this podcast, very proudly, I say, Guardians of the Plantation. Because these are the media, the useful idiots in the media and the fake news, as well as the Democrat Party. They have created these modern day 21st century places where you can't get out of them because you're so dependent and it's so bad. You got a bad education, there's no jobs, there's nowhere to go, so therefore you're stuck there.
It honestly does feel like the Democrat Party at large, maybe the National Committee rather, would consider as almost like, they do consider minorities and ethnic groups for granted as voting blocks, but also it almost like, hey, we'll take care of you, and most of them are white liberals saying to minorities, hey, we'll take care of you, just vote for us, we'll take care of you, no worries, you definitely want this, instead of like saying, what matters to you, how can I fix it? It doesn't seem like they're really doing like the ground steps and figuring out what matters in the communities, because honestly the communities are in shambles.
Absolutely. And the cancel culture, the whole cancel culture, particularly as it relates to black Republicans and black conservatives and anyone who is black who dares move forward to try to become more than what they are and then say, hey, I'm a Republican and I'm going to run for office. That whole cancel culture of those individuals, it's not unique to the 21st century. It actually started in 1991 when Clarence Thomas was nominated to the Supreme Court of the United States, and he was nominated by George H.W. Bush, I believe. And on October 11th, 1991, he was a nominee, and there were, guess what? Allegations that came out of nowhere about Clarence Thomas having sexually assaulted Anita Hill.
Yep.
And then, of course, the implication is, oh, why? Here you have this black guy, and he is sexually assaulting, people while at work. It actually was, in and of itself, a racist, very much of a racist attack, but it's what the Democrats did in 1991 because they wanted to send a shot across the bow of the entire black community that you can't be a Republican, and if you do, you will pay a price.
Yeah, you don't have to be Republican. If you're conservative thinking or lean conservative, then you'll pay the price. Because as Clarence Thomas, during his testimony during that whole investigation, which was led by then Senator Joe Biden. Senator Joe Biden was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Yeah, and he doesn't have a clean record. What happened to that sexual allegation that came out a few months ago? That got buried real fast because it was not conducive to the Democrats' agenda. But anyways, what Clarence Thomas hit on the head when he was doing that hearing is he basically was facing, as he called it, a modern day lynching, which, it's like you're eviscerating his character on allegations that really have no evidence, and we get a lot of this he said, she said stuff, and we're probably going to beat, most recent memories, Brett Kavanaugh, and that's...
Yeah, we're going to go down, we're going to go down this rabbit hole because you just heard what The View did to Kim Klacik. No information they were interested in getting no information from her whatsoever. The same thing occurred in the Clarence Thomas hearings. It was about character assassination and nothing else, especially of people who happen to be black and Republican at the same time. We have 2 clips on the Clarence Thomas hearings. And if you think cancel culture is unique to millennials, you haven't seen anything until you've seen this particular hearing. Here is clip number 1 of that hearing.
This is a case in which this sleaze, this dirt, was searched for by staffers of members of this committee, was then leaked to the media, and this committee and this body validated it and displayed it at prime time over our entire nation. How would any member on this committee, any person in this room, or any person in this country would like sleaze said about him or her in this fashion?
There you go. So that was Clarence Thomas talking about how this was all being played out on national television with Joe Biden presiding over the Judiciary Committee in the United States Senate. And what did they do? They always have an FBI investigation of individuals who are nominated to the Supreme Court. The FBI investigates them. Incredibly thorough investigation. And of course the FBI came up with no conclusions whatsoever that this had ever happened, but it didn't stop the United States Senate and the Democrats, who then controlled it, to basically attack his character. And so they put this information out there that Anita Hill said that he constantly gave all of these verbal sexual advances and nuances and so forth. And then she came and proceeded to talk about it as well. We have the second clip of the Clarence Thomas hearing where he just says it the way it is. So listen, podcast listeners, if you ever want to know why we call this Guardians of the Plantation, because what's happening in 21st century America in this particular election, where African Americans are finally getting this question mark above their heads saying, is it smart for me to give all of my allegiance to one party when my life is worse off than it was 50 years ago, or is getting worse than it was 10 years ago because of the leadership in these cities? Here you have it. Listen to this second clip.
This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. And from my standpoint, as a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves, to do for themselves, to have different ideas. And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, this is what will happen to you. You will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
Just amazing. That speech by Clarence Thomas literally sums up modern America. That was in 1991, podcast listeners. And look where we are today. We have Kim Klacik, who's running, and they're attacking her. We have Tim Scott, a United States Senator from South Carolina. And what's the first thing they do to Tim Scott? They call him every name you can possibly imagine, obviously, and basically say, oh, you're just a token Republican.
Yeah. It's unfortunate.
Thoughts about that? I mean, when you look back at this, you're a millennial, you look back at this, and you probably think, oh no, this stuff only happens now. That was in 1991. No. And Joe Biden is the one that let it happen.
Yeah, after Clarence Thomas did that second clip, the camera panned to the panel. They were all pale and tight-lipped. They couldn't respond to that.
It was impossible. And so here's the theme. If you're black and you wander off the Dem plantation, you'll be crushed by the Democrats and their useful media idiots. That's really the theme. And so we have Herschel Walker. He comes out calling BLM a terrible organization, that he doesn't support them. And Herschel Walker, of course, he was also at the Republican National Convention supporting Donald Trump. I mean, at this particular point in time, you have to have a lot of courage if you're black and you are, let's say, a Republican, or even if you're a closet Republican but registered something else like an independent. You have to have a lot of courage to come out front in front of cameras to actually talk about these issues in an intelligent way, because there is no actual reward. There's only, of course, a lot of arrows that are shot at you. But we have a clip from Herschel Walker as well, and here it is.
First, I want to apologize to the American people, because I was blind, but now I can see. I was deaf, but now I can hear. The other day, I was listening to one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, and I heard her say that they are trained Marxists. And I've heard that statement so many times. But then yesterday, I finally heard it, and I saw it with my own eyes. And I'm challenging every owner in the NFL, every owner of Major League Sports, every owner of stadiums, every commissioners, every leader in Washington, every church. I'm challenging every professional player. Is this who you're supporting? Because a trained Marxist tells you that they're anti-government, they're anti-American, they're anti-Christian, they're anti-everything.
They're anti-family as well. And that's really where Herschel Walker is going to. And he's talking to his fellow players across the country, which I think is really fantastic. And what's interesting is, in the last 24 hours, BLM has removed from their website, the website's still up, but they have removed from it the idea that they want to eliminate the patriarchy. So they want to get rid of fathers and the whole family structure. That was in their manifesto, and now that has been removed because it's obviously incredibly unpopular. But does anyone believe for 1 minute because it's removed from their website that they don't still believe it? Of course they do, BLM. It's a Marxist organization. They just want to gain power in any way they can and then crush this country. I mean, what do you think about Herschel Walker's comments?
No, it's a growing trend. It's slow. It's a slow burn, but I could see it growing in the near future. But it's kind of unfortunate. Again, we're just going over and over again. Just a new trend developing.
And I also think that Herschel Walker, if you notice, I really haven't heard anyone on the Democrat side, contrary to Kim Klacik and also Supreme Court Justice nominee Clarence Thomas at that time in 1991. I don't hear a lot of people going after Walker because I think he's such a force in terms of a presence. I mean, he's one of those guys I could see him calling you up and saying, "I'm going to come over and kick you," or you know what. But the fact of the matter is, I haven't heard that so much. Now, of course, MSNBC and CNN, sometimes they will attack him, but not so much him as people like Tim Scott and Kimberly Klacik, and of course, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. As far as MSNBC and CNN and ABC, as far as all they're concerned, Clarence Thomas isn't even on the court. They don't even acknowledge that he's on there, because if they do, of course, the average American would look at the court, because the average American doesn't really pay attention to the court, would say, oh, wow, there actually is someone. Wow, he's a conservative. It's pretty amazing.
There's someone on the court that looks like me, but they don't really report that.
Exactly right. And here's the thing. We're talking about this also because of the fact that there is a vacancy, because Ruth Bader Ginsburg, RBG, has passed. And we are told now by the left that a sitting president who's duly elected doesn't have the right to replace a Supreme Court justice who has passed, which, of course, the United States Constitution empowers the President of the United States very clearly during his 4-year term. And it doesn't say the President may, it says the President shall. The United States Constitution says the President shall replace the individual. So the President of the United States, of course, he's going to nominate someone. It's going to go to the United States Senate. And we have a Democrat Party saying, well, that's not fair. It's not fair because it's the last year of his term. It's part of his term. His term's 4 years. If you want 3-year terms, do a constitutional amendment for 3-year terms. But apparently Democrats, they keep changing rules all the way through this election in every way. Not just about the election, but now about the Supreme Court. I mean, what do you think about this?
Well, if you go back to the ending of President Obama's term, there was a vacancy because Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia passed away untimely, and it was the last year of President Obama's presidency, and his goal was to nominate a new Supreme Court justice to replace the vacancy, but he did not have the Senate. So the Republicans were like, basically, we're not going to basically have this hearing. We're going to basically stall this lame duck for President Obama, and the Republicans had Congress control.
Because Obama was in his second term.
Yeah.
So he was a lame duck, and during that lame duck period of time, obviously the last 2 years of his presidency, Republicans had control of the Senate.
And they didn't want to give him they didn't want to move forward with the Supreme Court thing, and that, guess there was a prerogative, but now because of that, and I saw that coming as soon as RBG died, or whenever there was a vacancy, especially right now, is that it's like, well, if you guys set a precedent, so honor that same precedent too. And I get it until I heard, like, if you think about it, is if the shoe was on the other foot, I don't like to deal with what-ifisms, but like, if the Democrats had control of the Senate, they would just run with a Democrat president. They would just run it right through and not really care. It's a little so. Do you want to dishonor yourself or get a win?
Here's part of the conversation that drives me crazy. Is you indicated, not with you, but with the general public, you indicated that they would just do it because they could and they wouldn't care. It's like, well, the Democrats and Republicans, whoever is in charge, it is their responsibility. It's their constitutional responsibility to choose a replacement and get that replacement on the Supreme Court after they are nominated and after they are confirmed by the Senate. So it is their constitutional responsibility. But yet the Democrats are trying to open up this narrative, and so, by the way, so is the media, that it's not a constitutional responsibility. Instead, they're trying to rush it before the election.
That's a weird argument. They have a better chance of saying, well, if you did it to Merrick Garland, you should do it now. But that's not, I guess from what you just said, that's not the argument being used. But then again, I always see there's always overreach happening where it's like you could make this argument and make a good sound foundation, but then sometimes you just go way too far and then it starts to crumble beneath your feet because you're asking for more than what sounds reasonable.
And so the ever left-wing George Stephanopoulos of ABC News, their senior correspondent, I love that when they call him senior. I always say this because, he has a face of like a 5-year-old, and then, he's got gray hair. It's almost like he made his hair gray on purpose just so he looked like he could fit the title, the senior correspondent. Nancy Pelosi will only go on these left-wing media outlets. She won't go on any other media outlet, of course. So she does decide to go on George Stephanopoulos. I think it was on his program on Sunday. And he asks her questions about, well, how are you going to stop the replacement of Ruth Bader Ginsburg if the Republicans control the presidency and the United States Senate? And good old Pelosi has an answer, and here it is.
Some have mentioned the possibility, if they try to push through a nominee in a lame duck session, that you and the House could move to impeach President Trump or Attorney General Barr as a way of stalling and preventing the Senate from acting on this nomination.
Well, we have our options. We have arrows in our quiver that I'm not about to discuss right now.
I think her quiver is probably hanging down to the floor by now, so it's got to be hard carrying the arrows in that quiver. So Nancy Pelosi, I got to say this. Look, she's now ever so creative because she wants to potentially impeach the President of the United States or commence impeachment hearings so that's going to somehow slow down the confirmation of a Supreme Court justice nominee. The House doesn't have confirmation capability. It's the Senate that does. So the House has no say in this at the moment. However, in the United States Constitution, it speaks to the fact that Congress does have the right to increase or decrease the number of people on the Supreme Court. So that's one of the arrows in the quiver of Nancy Pelosi that she's really talking about.
They won 11 judges now.
They are saying openly, and have for some time, that they're either going to increase the number of members from 9 to 11, or maybe 9 to 15, as many as 15, because they want to just control. By the way, why not just go for 15? Additional 6, because that way they'll control the court. That's what they want anyway. And so what they're saying is, well, if you don't listen to us and let the next president appoint the replacement of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we are going to change the law, which we can constitutionally if we control the House and the Senate and the presidency after this next election. If we control those two branches of government, we are going to alter the Supreme Court for perpetuity, and we are going to control it, and of course get rid of the Senate filibuster permanently, in which case we're going to be able to confirm the most radical, out-of-control, far-left, anti-constitutional people ever seen on the United States Supreme Court. That's what they're saying behind the scenes, and now they're saying it out there for everybody to hear.
And unfortunately, a lot of people actually like that message, which is kind of concerning in itself.
Yeah, so the mob is in charge. As Victor David Hanson said in his podcast, the Constitution was designed to protect the individual from the mob. The Democrats want to put the mob in charge. In fact, the mob's in charge of America's cities right now. Not all of them, but certainly they're in charge in New York, they're in charge in Seattle, and they're in charge in Portland. And they were in charge in Minneapolis, and certainly in certain parts of Chicago that has happened as well. It's just the most incredible thing I've ever seen. So Nancy Pelosi and the entire Democrat Party, they've lost their mind. And not to be outdone, AOC also has a press conference on this very subject of the Supreme Court, which, by the way, for the podcast listeners, this is interesting, right? Because Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House. But now, on these important issues, AOC is now also having press conferences as well, as if she is the shadow Speaker of the House. It's like she's sending a message. She, AOC, is sending a message to Nancy Pelosi that, Nancy, if you don't do what the farthest of far left in Congress want, we're going to just consume you and throw you out and take over, which they're kind of taking over anyway. But Nancy, it's hard to believe, I know podcast listeners, but Nancy actually isn't as far left as AOC and the squad. So we have a clip of good old AOC who talks about how Mitch McConnell is playing with fire. So you got to listen to this clip. Here it is.
And to Mitch McConnell, we need to tell him that he is playing with fire. We need to make sure that this vacancy is protected, that our election continues, and that the American people have their say. Thank you very much.
Yes, so the American people do have their say because we live in a republic. They elect representatives to represent them. Then those representatives go to Washington. And then in Washington, the House of Representatives and the United States Senate and the President of the United States get to run the government. And if you have the same party in the Senate as you have in the presidency, you get to decide who's on the Supreme Court if there's a vacancy. But good old Mitch McConnell, he's moving full speed ahead, but OC is saying you're playing with fire. See, this is a threat. Just like we started out this podcast, we're talking about the guardians of the plantation, how the media and the Dems, they actually attack and threaten black Republicans. Now the Democrat Party has become this party of threatening everybody. They don't think that there are rules that are established in the Constitution, and they don't care, and they have no intention of following them whatsoever. What are your thoughts on the good old AOC? Do you think she's going to ultimately succeed in ousting Nancy? Because it's pretty clear now what's going on with these separate press conferences.
Only if Speaker Pelosi keeps, currying favor with the progressive left wing, which is almost by her always like kind of opening up, peeking the door open for them to actually gaining more influence. Before I know, she's going to be eaten by her own monster. So.
And she said in her, AOC said in that clip, she said the vacancy must be protected. Protected. How do you protect a vacancy? The Constitution doesn't say in it, when there's a Supreme Court justice that dies or decides to leave the Supreme Court for whatever reason, the vacancy shall be protected for the next president. The Constitution doesn't say that, AOC, and I'm sure you probably have never, ever read it because you could care less about rules, you could care less about history, you could care less about tradition, and you could care less about our republic, and you don't even know what a republic is anyway. So, speaking of that, so Justice Kavanaugh, will we have another Justice Kavanaugh type hearing or another Justice Clarence Thomas type hearing on whoever replaces and is nominated to replace RBG?
Well, the President Trump's only looking for, I think, just female replacements. So good luck with that. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, so how do you attack, and this is what I thought too. It's like, what if Trump chose a black woman? How do you, as a Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, attack a black woman? We know how you attack a black man. We saw it with Clarence Thomas. You say that he's a sexual predator. We know how you do it. A white guy, Kavanaugh, you say he's a sexual predator. But what do you do with a white woman or a black woman? How do you attack them?
You're just only being used by President Trump, and then insert disparaging comments about the president himself, and then say you're a token. Insert all that stuff. Say basically not make it about the candidate, but making it about why they are being nominated rather than their own character themselves and vetting that they are good for the job.
But what do you think the Democrats will do? I mean, because you can't. If you're a Democrat, of course, your message to women in suburbs is that we want to keep your children safe, and that is a key part of their campaign to gain the control of the United States Senate and control of the presidency. Well, what if you have a woman who is being nominated to be on the Supreme Court? How do you character assassinate this particular person? Because this is the protected class of the Democrat Party that they're, at least that's what they're saying.
Well, it goes against where do they think ideologically. Then I guess if you're not one of them, you're not one of us.
So Justice Kavanaugh, remember what they did to him? We just talked about that. Well, you already heard what they did, of course, in 1991 to good old Clarence Thomas. Democrats are really capable of everything because Christine Blasey Ford, during the Kavanaugh hearings, said that he sexually assaulted her while they were in high school, but mysteriously she didn't remember the sexual assault until Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings on the Supreme Court. That's when her memory came back because she began seeing him on TV, and that's when she remembered that that's the guy that did it back in high school. So in any event, look, I'll be frank with you. I never believed the word that she was saying because it wasn't credible, because even her friends, whom Christine Blasey Ford said were at the party with her, said that Kavanaugh was never there. So it was all nonsense, in my opinion, because not a single person, in fact, it was the opposite. No one corroborated it. But Kavanaugh came back, of course, after the Blasey Ford allegations. And just like Clarence Thomas, Kavanaugh had to come back and basically say, where do I go to basically get my reputation back? Where do I go? I mean, I'm on trial in front of the American people for something I never did. You're just throwing stuff out there to destroy me. Okay, fine, but now you're trying to destroy my family as well. We have that clip to take you back to memory lane to give you an idea of what's going to happen in the near future. Here's the clip.
This confirmation process has become a national disgrace. The Constitution gives the Senate an important role in the confirmation process, but you have replaced advice and consent with search and destroy. Since my nomination in July, there's been a frenzy on the left to come up with something, anything, to block my confirmation. Shortly after I was nominated, the Democratic Senate leader said he would, quote, oppose me with everything he's got. A Democratic senator on this committee publicly referred to me as evil. Evil. Think about that word. And said that those who supported me were, quote, complicit in evil.
Yeah, so the Democrat Party went as far as to say that Justice Kavanaugh was evil, and that everything that was alleged against him was true, just like, by the way, with Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, with Justice Kavanaugh, the FBI, as they always do, they provide background checks, very thorough background checks of your entire life, and nothing was found in Kavanaugh's background, other than the fact that apparently he likes beer, which he admitted in front of the committee. But nonetheless, that's what happens. That's what happens to you when you try to move forward. And it's even worse if you're black, of course. But in modern America, with Justice Kavanaugh, let's face it, that was probably the single worst period in American history, in my opinion, for the Democrat Party, short of there being the party of slavery.
Well, Senator Feinstein sat on the allegations until the last possible moment, so it felt like, if it was true, then you would have brought up it way before, and then, we wouldn't have gotten to this point where it's a big national snafu in front of everybody, airing out our dirty laundry, supposedly. And then, his when Kavanaugh defended himself in front of the Senate, he obviously got emotional, a little angry, because honestly, how would you feel when you're being accused of something that you emphatically deny and provide evidence and all that stuff? The Democrats didn't believe any of his evidence.
And that wasn't corroborated.
Yeah. They didn't believe any of his evidence. And then he said, his behavior, his emotions was unbecoming of a Supreme Court justice. But, how would you be able to keep your cool when you're being totally eviscerated in front of the entire the world, actually, to be honest, where you got most people not believing you, even though, I kind of feel like the whole story, all the evidence coming out was like, this wouldn't hold water in court, but it's not really a legal court, it's a court of public opinion, and, he made it through it, but, how many scars did he earn from that?
Yeah, it's a court of public opinion. It's a great point. But nonetheless, the president stuck with Kavanaugh. He became a Supreme Court justice, and nonetheless, good old Clarence Thomas, George Bush, the first George Bush, president of the United States in '91, stuck with Clarence Thomas as well. And Clarence Thomas has been a reliable conservative. But of course, once again, if you're in the black community, they always try to ignore him because that would be a great role model for the black community. Look, here's somebody who is black and became Supreme Court, got on the Supreme Court of the United States, which is amazing. So on March 4th of this year, Chuck Schumer gave us a great premonition of what the Democrats will do if they get power and they control the presidency, the United States Senate, and the United States House of Representatives. This election is right around the corner, and if the Democrats control both houses in Congress and both chambers in Congress, as well as the President of the United States, then you can just listen to Chuck Schumer himself talk about what it is that he is willing to do and what the Democrats will not stop short of just to gain complete power of the United States Supreme Court. This is on March 4th, and this is Chuck Schumer outside the Supreme Court of the United States. And here he is.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
This sounds to me like a banana republic in the third world. It does, like where a politician gets up and the politician threatens other people who are in prominent positions. It sounds like that's what does, by the way, happen, podcast listeners, in banana republics, where basically you don't have a dialogue, you threaten people, and everybody, backs down because it's like, oh, wow, he might get out the guns, or he might storm, or he might get out the guillotines, or whatever. But that's a threat.
Yep.
That's a threat.
Well, yeah, it exactly is a threat. But the thing is that initially you would say it's pandering and don't take the speech seriously. But unfortunately, a lot of people in this country fully and emphatically endorse that message and endorse those kind of actions now from that speech from Schumer. But honestly, Schumer, the way he speaks and the way he does in his actions, I just can't take him seriously. I bet he doesn't genuinely mean it. He just does it for political wins and political favor.
But that's the problem. So I gotta ask you this as a millennial.
Yeah,
it's not okay to throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at somebody. It's like, let's just say you and I get in an argument, right?
Yep.
And then the argument escalates, not to fisticuffs, but it escalates to the point that I say, you know what? I've got a gun, and if you don't stop, you better watch it.
Yeah.
Well, that's escalating to a point where I don't know how you come back off of that ledge.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
especially when your base supports that message.
And yes, in the Senate, here's Schumer. He's the Senate minority leader, and he's going out on a ledge, and he's basically someone that so many on the left look to, and he's saying these things. So is there any wonder that even though that happened in March of this year, that now we have violence in the street? Because this is what Democrat politicians talk about. They're threatening fellow prominent citizens in the United States, people on the court. They're threatening judges, which, by the way, you can't do, and other politicians.
It's disturbing.
And what do millennials think about this? This is what I'm curious about. What do millennials think about the idea of stacking the court, which is really what Schumer and AOC and Nancy Pelosi are referring to? If you Republicans replace RBG, we are going to stack the court. Unequivocally, we're going to do it if we get in charge of Congress.
And then Don Lemon, of course, mentioned on CNN to bring the whole system down, get rid of Electoral College. It's like, okay, what's next?
And by the way, interesting enough, Victor David Hanson saw that. Victor David Hanson, we had a whole podcast where we played his Hillsdale College lecture, and he literally said that exact same thing. He said, first they're going to get rid of the Senate filibuster altogether, then they're going to pack the court, this is if they get in charge, and then after that, they're going to get rid of the Electoral College, and then after that, they're going to try to reapportion the Senate, because senators shouldn't be 2 per state. It should be reapportioned by population, because if you don't have an Electoral College, why would you have a Senate? And then lastly, they're going to have complete and utter open borders, because since you're going to run now by popular vote only in the United States, because you have no Electoral College, you want as many people on the dole as possible.
Yep.
And so you need a lot of new people on the dole to make sure that you will forever have the mob in charge of the country, and the individual's rights are gone.
It's distressing.
It is. It's exactly what they want. So I'm just curious from you, because you're the millennial. What do you think millennials do they care if the Supreme Court is going to be stacked? Or do they really care about that at all?
Well, if they're more liberal leaning, they believe in that. It seems like they want that to happen. I think 9's enough. We started with, what did we start with early on? I think 5 or 7, and then all of a sudden increased to 9 through FDR. So
no, the last time the court was increased was from 6 to 9, and that was in the 1860s.
Oh, I thought that was. Oh no, FDR wanted to.
FDR tried to pack the court, which
That's
is
right.
what, and he had enormous blowback by the media, because the media actually, they were critical thinkers.
Yeah.
And now the Democrat Party, by the way, Democrats once again want to pack the court, just like during the New Deal. But now the Democrats want to do it all over again, except this time it's because they can't win elections, so they're trying to basically get control of the court.
It's more or less that they're not doing what's right, even though they're only doing things what's to their benefit, and unfortunately their benefit is going to be negative to the country, in my opinion.
I agree. And so in the Wall Street Journal, the opinion section, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal wrote an article entitled "Breaking Judicial Norms, a History." And it starts out and it says, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is widely reported to have told his Democratic colleagues on Saturday that nothing is off the table for next year if Republicans confirm a Supreme Court nominee in this Congress. He means this as a threat that Democrats will break the filibuster and pack the court with more justices in 2021 if they take control of the Senate in November's election. So what else is new? Democrats have a long history of breaking procedural norms on judges. While packing the court would be their most radical decision to date, it would fit their escalating pattern. Let's review the modern historical lowlights to see which party has really been the political norm breaker. The Bork assault. When Reagan selected Robert Bork in '87, the judge was among the most qualified ever nominated. No less than Joe Biden had previously said that he might have to vote to confirm Bork. Then Ted Kennedy issued his demagogic assault from the Senate floor, complete with lies about women, forced into the back alley abortions, and blacks who would have to sit at segregated lunch counters. Same old, same old. They're doing it still today. Democrats and the press then unleashed unprecedented political assault. Previous nominees who had failed in the Senate were suspected of corruption. Abe Fortas or thought unqualified. Harold Carswell. Bork was defeated because of distortions about his jurisprudence. This began the modern era of hyper-politicized judicial nominations, though for the Supreme Court, it has largely been a one-way partisan street. And I just want to finish with this example that the Wall Street Journal editorial board gives. It says, no Democratic nominee has been borked, to use the name that became a verb. No Democratic nominee to the courts, to the Supreme Court, has been borked, which is the use of Bork's name because they just completely and utterly crushed his reputation. Even Justice Sonia Sotomayor, whose left-wing legal views were obvious upon her nomination, received a respectful GOP hearing and was confirmed 68-31 with 9 GOP votes. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was confirmed 96-3. Stephen Breyer, 87-9. And Elena Kagan, 63-37. So way to go, editorial board of the Wall Street Journal, to set the record straight. There is without question one party that will do anything to make sure that they are the guardians of the plantation, no matter who you are, especially if you're black, but also if you're trying to go on the court. And that particular party is the Democrat Party.
Yep.
Sorry, I saw that.
You summed it up.
No, the Wall Street Journal summed it up, actually. So
you summarized it very well.
Well, the Journal just did a great job because I wish more people actually read newspapers
Paywalls
online.
are a thing, though.
Yeah, well, the Journal is very expensive, but I got to tell you something. It is it's the best written paper, I think, in America. And it's the best written paper because they always bring in a sense of history because they have the gravitas and the money to hire really experienced journalists to write deep and thoughtful pieces like this that say, hey, look, here's what's happened over the last 50 years, and it's all on the other side. And we heard this with Bork, of course. We didn't have any clips from that. We certainly could have gotten them. And then we heard it with Clarence Thomas. We heard that clip today. And then Justice Kavanaugh. And then, of course, finally, we hear AOC, we hear Nancy Pelosi, and we hear Chuck Schumer, the leaders in Congress, if you will, on the Democrat side, threaten not just the Republican Party. They're not threatening the party as much as they're threatening our republic, in my opinion. And I wish it's my hope, and I hope that millennials care enough that they won't let this happen and that they'll start voting people out.
I don't know about that.
Final thoughts on that before we close this out.
I just gave it to you.
So Ryan worked all day, podcast listeners. It's been a rough day for Ryan because he just started a new job, and he just started a couple of days ago. So he's in this new job. There's commuting involved, and he's getting home. So we appreciate him being here. And that is it for Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to Ryan the Squirrel Brady, and of course our producer Adam Couture, our assistant producer Christopher Hopkins. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and our website. See you next time.